Good morning, everyone, fellow corporate tax chattel on this glorious tax plantation we call Earth. I hope everyone's doing well this morning, afternoon, or evening, or night, depending on where you end up listening in from. I know we've got Dorian Gray and Beyond Elemental already in here, so it's always good to see you guys. Beyond Elemental, where that individual happens to be located is in apparently a very highly censored area. So when we do go over to Rumble, unfortunately, this morning, we will not have Beyond Elemental with us. That's actually what we're going to start with this morning, by the way. But beforehand, man, what a night. We're going to kind of give it a couple moments and see who might meander in here this morning and say hi. Third shift is not for the weak, that's for sure. And it takes a real special person to actually enjoy it, but golden handcuffs, right? So before we get into things, I was looking at the stream yesterday, and I have the habit of getting too far into the law stuff when in the morning, but everything always relates back into law. It does, because it's your rights and your property that they're after in the first place. And I was trying to consider a very simple way to explain communism, how it came about and what it is, without going and showing you documents and talking about William the Conqueror and the Doomsday Book and all that good stuff that I did yesterday and ordinarily do on my law show that is on the weekends at night. So if you are interested in that, that's where we're going to cover that, and you'll better understand how I come to my conclusions, my perspectives on the stories that we cover this morning. But we have Theo Shen just got in here. Shawnee B, good to see you. Hold the line. What's up, man? We've got Jerry, son of Mick. Good to see you, brother. So the communism, the simple explanation. Ulick just showed up. Good to see you. The simple explanation, and I think that's my subscribers have told me that's one of, something I'm good at, is being able to simplify this stuff, is basically when they began to outlaw slavery, and the Magna Carta did open the door for this, but when it began to be a worldwide thing and everybody started to get rid of it as a result of the Barbary slave trade, the African slave trade, and, is enslavement of people of all races. So it wasn't a race thing. Barbary slave trade was a lot of Christians, and of course the African slave trade was Africans, and it was a big industry and it had to go away. And this left a huge workforce void, if you will, in the agriculture and industry of the wealthy people, like colonization, deckhands for sailing, agriculture again, stuff like that. They needed this labor, and nobody was going to work for these people for, as slaves, right? So they had to figure out how to create a legalized form of slavery, and that ended up being developed into the philosophy of communism. Okay. And without getting too much into that, because that's a law thing, communism is essentially complete control over your property. You have zero rights, and that's what we're up against. It's what we've been up against. They thought McCarthy was crazy, in the whole red, what they call it, the Red Scare back in, I believe it was the 50s or sometime in that era. And, they wanted you make you think it was ridiculous. I even found out yesterday, as I had shown, and I thought they could not do this. They took the goals that were put on congressional record from a communist book regarding the United States. They cut the congressional record off, and then at archive.org, it omitted those pages in that congressional record. So you can't even borrow it. So borrowing is restricted or unavailable. It's crazy, right? So this is what we're facing. It's absolute control over your property. And and this, of course, was actually tried out in the United States originally, or not originally, but well, maybe actually, if my memory serves me correctly. So even though we were founded as a common law, because common law opens the door for democracy, which is slavery, right? Opens the door for fascism, which is slavery, and opens the door for communism, which is slavery. They're all three branches from the same foundation, which is just natural law expressed as common law. So common law is where you want to be at, but you can only be there if you know the law and you know how to operate as a sovereign, and you're not in debt, or somebody doesn't have a higher claim to your title, right? So they figured out, well, all we have to do is basically bankrupt entire populations, and we'll create entire tax plantations out of these countries and have cheap wage slavery, which is what we are today. And that's how the idea of communism kind of came about. And it was first introduced in this country. Like I said, they tried it in a couple towns. Guess why it didn't work? Because nobody wanted to bust their ass when everybody was getting the same thing. So you got this highly trained doctor over here who's going to operate, well, back then they were bone saws, so they weren't, so that's not a good example. But say like a skilled craftsman is going to, make you something, but he's going to receive the same wage as the guy who doesn't even want to do anything and just shuffles his feet all day. It doesn't make sense. He's going to get the same rations and everything. So it fell apart here. So they forced it in Russia. That's as far as I'm going to go. And that's really where it came about. And then the United States actually propped up and subsidized Russia and intentionally, drove away or suppressed or killed anybody who brought attention to the fact that communism was a huge threat to us. And as you can see, they've omitted it, and they've been subtly subverting us from the beginning. And their tactics are to use a minority against the majority, right? So whether it be race or just be ideology, such as the rainbow mafia, to limit what you can say and what you cannot say. Now, while this seems innocent, while this seems like a good thing at first, right? Like, yeah, you shouldn't be able to, say this or do this to these people or whatever. They're merely just tools to open the door, right? To be able to introduce statutes that they can codify, right? To restrict your speech. So what came from, you can't talk about this person, right? You can't talk about the rainbow mafia. You can't say that they're weird for, wearing butt plug tails and shitting in litter boxes and all that crazy stuff, right? You can't say none of that, right? But then it evolves into, you can't say anything bad about the government. You can't say anything bad about this powerful person, that powerful person, blah, blah, blah. And that's exactly how it goes. We got Ida Hat in the house. Good to see you. Good to see you. So I just wanted to go through that a little bit while some people poured in here. And again, talking about law, I think some people are like, it's boring. I'll come back in a little bit or whatever. So I get it. It's not everybody's cup of tea. That's why we're reserving it for one time a week. But it does fit into all this. So, and it fits in with the first story that we're going to start with this morning, which is Meta, right? I wanted to say Meta for some reason. Meta, right? By Lizard Zuckerberg, has decided to abandon their fact-checking policy, right, in favor of the community notes that has been instituted on X, which is pretty interesting. And so what's funny is there's another podcaster on Rumble, actually, I watch because he's funny as hell, is the Salty Cracker. I know I share some subscribers with him, actually. And when he showed the same exact article yesterday, and he brought up a good point, he said that it says right here when they're talking about, so first he says it announced that it will end its fact-checking program on its platforms in exchange for X-style community notes as part of a slate of changes targeting censorship and embracing free expression. Well, how thoughtful of them. It's not like they were forced into that situation at all, right? By the people pretty much all standing up and saying, we're sick of this shit. And that's what, even though they're international countries, all nations need this nation. We are the foundation of the securities exchange scheme that underpins the entire world economy. We have the most powerful military, and we have a huge amount. We have the best market economy, basically, where you want to sell your stuff in. So all other nations want to sell their goods in our nation, not to mention all the resources we have, but we can't touch because they've been collateralized, which is something that was being worked on before with the Keystone Pipeline, but got shut down right away once Biden took office, which would have actually made us energy independent, which would have hugely impacted our foreign policy and made us not have to bend the knee to certain other countries like OPEC or, Saudi Arabia and OPEC and all them guys. It would have given us a large degree of our national sovereignty back to us by being energy independent. But I'm getting off track here. So that's why everybody stood up. They're tired of this stuff, right? So Zuckerberg, the Zuck, right? He's losing a lot of data mining cattle to X, and he's getting tired of it. So he's like, you know what? maybe we should stop giving people, stupid fact checks that contradict themselves in their own fact check. But what was funny about this article, right, was when Salty Cracker showed it yesterday, and it was funny. Down here, I'm trying to see, it says the company on Monday added 3 people to its board. Now, if you guys don't know who Salty is or never watched one of his streams, he's a little eccentric, very eccentric, but he's hilarious. So, I'll give him a little shout out, and you guys check him out. He may not be your cup of tea, but I like him. So right here where it says 3 people, it said 3 white people the other day when he made his stream. And he brought up the point, these people still cannot let go of their identity politics. And that is a communist. That is one of the main tenets of communism, to always create division by bringing attention to race, unless it's white people, because that's the whole point, is use the nation's minority against its majority, right? It's a fact. Don't get mad at me. Just read the communist textbook, which was part of the CPUSA, the Communist Party of the USA in 1950s, which was allowed to be here because we had freedom of speech, right? So they used that to undermine us. And then read the Communist Manifesto, and you'll see this is their exact tactics, right? So I said 3 white people to its board. Like, that was an accomplishment. Now, I think it's because Salty has several 100,000 subscribers or something, or at least almost 200,000 subscribers. And some other people must have picked it up, and they went back and edited their article, because I seen it with my own eyes. It says, now it just says 3 people to its board, but they're putting Dana White up on the board of their, what do they call it? I forget what the name of this thing they're going to call it now. It's basically community notes, though. So he's going to be on the board of their free speech program, Dana White is. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen the report or the interview Dana White did on free speech, where the reporter asked him about it. In fact, I don't know why I didn't pull that up. Bear with me while we're still waiting. We're just kind of giving it a little time before I start showing stuff. Dana White on free speech reporter, right? Maybe it'll come up, maybe it won't. But he basically told the reporter to fuck off. He's like, "What do you mean, dude? What do you mean? Yeah, here it is. Hold on one second. We'll cue this up. This is hilarious. I personally really appreciated this. Now, Dana White, personally, obviously, I'd have to be really wealthy too in the first place, probably. And then he seems like kind of a dick sometimes, but I like what he stands for. And he's never tried to censor his fighters for, you had the one guy that was speaking out against the Rainbow Mafia, and he was like, dude, this guy can say, as long as he makes me money, he can say whatever the hell he wants. He's up, he's a grown man, free individual. So here we go. Let me share this real quick. Oh, I already sure. Oh, yeah, my bad. It's my late night, guys. Bear with me as I get into the swing of the stream. Yeah, this is hilarious. Let's make sure it's not. I didn't have it.
About, like, you obviously give a long leash to your fighters about, what they can say when they are up there with the UFC microphone, and you are getting into territory of homophobia, transphobia. Like, is there?
I don't give anybody a leash.
Well, I'm saying
a leash.
I'm like
free speech. Control what people say. Going to tell people what to believe. Going to tell people. I don't fucking tell any other human being what to say, what to think, and there's no leashes on any of them. What is your question?
I was asking that question. I'll move on, though.
Yeah, probably a good idea. That's ridiculous to say I give somebody a leash. Free speech, brother. People can say whatever they want, and they can believe whatever they want.
If about, like, you obviously.
Yeah, that's pretty hilarious. So, I mean, total 180 on their former, the bullshit we've been dealing with for the last 4 years. And it seems like CommuTube is the only one who's not getting on board with the whole situation. The other day, they struck down a fairly large channel called Two Mics Live for having on an actual, and here I have to censor myself, which is why we're going to Rumble before we talk about this stuff, but I'll briefly mention he actually had somebody who was part of a trial for a certain procedure, was hurt by it, came on his show, told her story, had the documents to prove it from the trial and everything like that. The government's already corroborated all of this evidence in the first place, and they struck his channel down, completely eliminated, gone, done, right? So CommuTube's the only one who's not getting with the program, right? But now let's get into some more interesting results of not having free speech. So see what economics does. See how we actually have power, not just in our sheer force together as the people, you know, as the mob, which Rome had always feared. But I hate that term because it makes you seem like you're uneducated and unruly, which they obviously were. Bread and circuses were all they needed, and Rome fell to the ground. But so I don't like the mob, but that's why Rome feared them. And the people are intelligent, right? So that's the difference, or supposed to be, right? And it seems like they're getting more so. And not only do we influence by force, but we influence with our attention, because the new currency, right, is not just our sweat equity, and it's not oil anymore. The new currency or the new security for the future currency, rather, is data. It's your attention. As they move more and more or closer and closer to a digital currency, right? And that's where everything is converting all of their transactional platforms to accept, right? All over the United States anyways. I don't know how it is in the rest of the world. I haven't looked. The currency is your attention, because data is what creates the blockchain that backs the cryptocurrency, right? So, and even without that, just in advertising revenue and all the other things, your attention is powerful. And everybody shifted their attention from old Zuckcuck's fucking communist program he had over there. And look what that caused him to do. And I'm sure Trump winning and threatening to punish people who, probably had a little something to do with it, because he went down there and, of course, kissed the ring at Mar-a-Lago. So, but let's get into this. We got a little bit of Brian from Here's the Deal, and here's what's going on in England, right? So this is what happens when you don't have people stand up, be willing to fight for or deprive their attention away from something that's struggling to take away your free speech. I mean, England, is really not fair to say that, because they're in a bad situation to begin with and have been for a long time. One, they don't have arms. Any of my subscribers in England, you guys can please contribute to in the comments or in the chat if you're watching this morning what's going on over there. But I'm going to show this video from Brian, and we're going to see exactly what the other side of the coin could have been if we didn't have the tide turn this way, right? So let's go over here. Oops. Sorry, guys. Edge tab. This guy.
American policing was the only joke without a punchline. The same thing, the same totalitarian actions are going on in the UK. And before I get to this, it's bad when mainstream media sources, in the context of talking about police overstepping their bounds, starts quoting George Orwell's 1984. Check this out.
For centuries, Britain was a bastion of democracy. Today, it's become a bastion of censorship. Police hunt down and charge anyone who expresses what the government says is a wrong idea. Dale Hurd brings us that story from London.
When a British lawyer and free speech advocate wanted to test the United Kingdom's censorship laws, she tweeted that perhaps her cat is a Methodist because it likes Dreamy's cat treats. Then she asked a friend to report her for hate speech against Methodists to see what might happen. And local police issued a case number. Sarah.
That's interesting. So she got with she typed something on the internet. She got with a friend, said, hey, why don't you report me for hate speech? The cops intercepted that, created a case number, and started to investigate her for words. Same thing you see here. The FBI knocks on people's doors, questions them about social media posts. So basically, in their eyes, you have committed a thought crime. And they, again, show themselves to be conformists rather than moralists, doing what they're told, following policy, regardless of what is right. And the same exact thing is happening in the UK.
So I can't really get into the meat of this until we get into the Rumble stream, but I'll try to, like, you know, I hate self-censoring. It's kind of like wearing a muzzle, right? But I'm going to try to speak around the algorithm here and explain what this has evolved into to this point. And what's interesting to me, X being a free speech platform, or claiming to, is when I was looking for people reporting on well, I guess it's maybe not X's fault now that I think about it, because it's probably an entire media blackout, or X blackout rather, in England, right? So you're not going to find X videos about what's going on in England. But what the ones that I have seen, basically there's a huge wave of crime, like I was telling you guys yesterday, and people are dealing with grapes everywhere, right? Just tons of grapes. And so when they speak out about against these people, and generally the country that they're coming from, Afghanistan, right? Afghanistan, right? That's like a huge problem. And England's not the first country to complain about this. And many countries are complaining about this, and they're coming over and it's like nothing to them. I watched an interview with a British guy actually asking, which of course I can't show on YouTube, asking these two guys what they thought about the consequences of their actions. And they said, yeah, we know that they'll make noise, so we make sure that doesn't happen. That's the consequences to their action, not the consequences on her, or, whatever, anything, psychological and emotional, physical, how it's going to impact her family, children, rest of her life. If, none of that, no, that was of no concern. It was the consequences that immediately came to their mind was, yeah, we try to avoid getting consequences, right? Because we do this. And this is what we've been doing before we came here. This is how we operate, because that's what happens when you have people come from countries where women, the other half of mankind are not people, right? So, but this is a dangerous one, obviously, because I'm going to get on this one. So we'll return to this one once we go to Rumble, but I have this other one queued up here. And this is actually Jordan Peterson. Now, Jordan Peterson, I'm not a huge fan of. Some of his ideology, if he only knew the law and how law actually works, which you probably could not tell him that he does not. I mean, I could prove it to him, but his ego may not give me the time of day. He tries not to be egotistical, which is usually a characteristic of a very egotistical person at heart. When it's over-exaggeration of one characteristic is usually an indication of another characteristic. But some of the stuff he says I agree with, and it's not entirely terrible. And this happens to be one of those things. What can you expect from somebody who grew up in socialism, borderline communism, because that's what it has become now. So they don't know any better, and it's fine. I totally get it, dude.
Canada in the doldrums that it's in, and has put Canada in the doldrums that it's in, and is also responsible for the state of your country, which is dreadful. And it's I don't know if you guys in the UK understand how sad it is for us in Canada and in the United States to watch what you're doing to yourself. I mean, the UK is a great country. When I go there, I go to Oxford,
Hey, listen, I know many people, you say Agent Jordan. We got Agent Jordan. When we watch these clips, we're looking for opinions. You know what I mean? Or like insights, rather, not opinions, but insights. And his insight happens to be accurate here. And it's exactly what I say. So I play it to reinforce that this is a common intellectual conclusion amongst people who are, philosophically intellectual. And you're talking about the ideology of and philosophy of communism. This is how they start. Why do you think the First Amendment is the First Amendment? And it's actually the freedom of the press. So people probably do not realize this, but back in the day, one of the reasons they had to take over the newspapers in the early 1900s, especially here in the United States, is because like Rockefeller, who was monopolizing the oil industry, and Carnegie, who was monopolizing the steel industry, they were ruthlessly crucified by real journalists, real investigative journalists. I'm talking about, not like I'm going to tell you the facts with my opinions. No, I'm going to investigate and find out what crimes you're committing. You know, these people that call themselves journalists today are propagandists. They're intelligence agents, like Piers Morgan, for instance. He's probably so tied into MI6 and MI5, it's not even funny, right? And occasionally he says stuff that I agree with, and it's, you know, so that's the whole thing. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But back in the day, the actual journalists investigated Rockefeller, or would investigate these big oligarchs and the politicians, and it kept them honest, well, as honest as they could be. And when they were dishonest, or they committed a crime, or they did something unethical or immoral, it was spread all over the news, all over the newspapers, everywhere, all over the media. Everybody knew. One particular thorn in Rockefeller's side was Ida Tarbell, and I'm not going to get into that because that's a history thing, but just look up Rockefeller and Ida Tarbell. They had a feud for quite some years. I'm surprised she didn't end up unaliving herself with 2 wounds to the back of her head, right? So just stuff like that. And that's why they had to take over the media, because communism can never work with a free press. It cannot ever work with a free press. And that is what you've just witnessed over the last 5 years. Was they had been steadily and increasingly doing, they did what we like to call the totalitarian tiptoe, right? For decades and decades and decades, just encroaching little by little by little upon your right to say what you want. You know what I mean? And let me get something else clear. There's a huge difference between free speech and freedom of press and being vulgar and degenerate. Okay, because even under common law, which is the base law, that is the human expression of natural law in society, is what common law is, and that's the law of sovereigns. There's still law, and you cannot be an immoral, degenerate, vulgar person. And that's actually, they can declare you a degenerate, or a distracted person, or an imbecile, or an idiot, and then they take your estate and your property. That's how they got us in the situation in the first place. They trick you into being a degenerate and then take your shit because you're a degenerate. So one of the ways anyway. So let's listen to the rest of this.
To Cambridge, to these remarkable places in London, see your unbelievable deep history, understand how much the world owes the UK in terms of, say, the establishment of common law and decent government everywhere, including places like India. We owe the UK such an immense debt. And to watch you guys like spiral yourselves into the ground for this idiot, weak political correctness that's gone so far that you can allow your working class women to be raped en masse sadistically and say nothing about it, and gaslight people who are telling the truth.
Did you hear what he just said? He put Pierce on blast. This might get this taken out from YouTube, but whatever. Let's go back. This is what I was telling you guys about. This is what's going on.
And to watch you guys like spiral yourselves into the ground for this idiot, weak political correctness that's gone so far that you can allow your working class women to be raped en masse sadistically and say nothing about it, and gaslight people who are telling the truth. It's so sickening. It's so demoralizing.
Yeah, what do you have to say to that, Pierce? There's nothing you can say.
We all pray, hope and pray here in Canada and the US that you get your act together and grow some spine again and put your damn country back together and stand up to these bloody psychopathic bullies and the woke green mob. Because
right. So here's something I hope my subscribers can understand is, yes, you can point out everything wrong or insidious or subversive that somebody does, right? That's not, when I play these clips, that's not why. You cannot discredit what he just said. What he said is exactly right. That's why I played this clip. Okay. And in fact, there's so little information coming out of England because of the media lockdown that they have over there that it's hard to get the full scope of what's going on. Because like he said, they're gaslighting the people that are telling the truth. They're locking people up, and most people are not saying anything because of it. So, this is the whole thing. We ended up in this situation through our ignorance. I've said this many times. Okay. So this is what this show is about, is remedying the ignorance, showing you that what's behind the propaganda, what's behind the psyops, right? So this psyop that I'm showing you is the Rainbow Mafia psyop, and it goes even deeper than that they've been perpetrating, right? Which allowed the last four, which we're going to get into once we go to Rumble. We're going to finish off with this on Rumble. it allowed the last 5 years to take place the way it has, right? Because they knew the time was right. We had allowed it to get to the point where they're like, we're going to close the trap now, right? And beyond that, it's through the ignorance of law that you're even subject to government or any kind of corporations in the first place, at least in the United States, okay? In the United States. And that's why we're like the last vestigial flame of any beacon of hope of freedom, because as long as our founding documents remain intact, you can reclaim your estate, snatch it out of their hands. If we do that en masse, the entire world economy would collapse, which is not necessarily what we want, right? But that's why I teach people who can understand it on Saturday. What we want is a gradual snatch it out of their hands so that we don't have mass die-offs and starvation and et cetera, et cetera. We want to get it out of their hands. And see, the law creates a natural barrier that only, like, people can only understand so much at a time. So as you're learning, you know what I mean, from me and from others, and you're learning how to do this, I can show you exactly how to do it. I don't think there's very many people who know how to do what I know how to do and VSOF knows how to do. And it's already been successfully done. It's because it's simple. The law only works one way, guys. It does. And we ended up in this situation. What he's discussing is law, and they use psychological operations to be able to pass statutes based on the fact that they are administering you as an infant. And that's why you need to watch my Saturday night shows. If you have not watched my Saturday night shows yet, go back and watch the Magna Carta, watch the 5 jurisdictions of jurisprudence, watch any of those, right? Those are good. The Superior Court, power of the people, right? This stuff works. And it's, you know, unless you're going to actually learn the law, learn how government's supposed to work and how it got this way, then you better be grateful that we have what we have going on now in the United States, and hope that we can spread this positive change in tide in the right direction to other nations as well. Because if they become completely, entirely taken over by communism while we move back in the right direction towards our common law roots, and I'm talking as a nation, because if you learn and you're dedicated like I was, and Zen at VSOF, which is Vocational Science of Freedom, and his people are for years and years, then you could do it now, right? But en masse is the only way we're going to get the world to change. That's it. That's a fact. En masse is the only way we're going to get the world to change. And we did take a positive, we shifted positively in the right direction, okay, in this nation. So now we need to take advantage of this, because they were getting ready to close the communist claptrap for sure. Absolutely. All companies were geared up for it. Mark Cuban bought an entire town so he could be a feudal lord under this new feudal communist system, right, that they were setting up. And yeah, dude, the threat was real. The threat was real. So that's pretty much all I can really do on YouTube this morning for what I set up, guys. So I guess the last thing I'll say to my YouTube subscribers is this. Before you can debate with me or anybody who knows the law, like, and I'm talking about the history of law, how law works, how common law and civil law were intermixed, which is statutory law, how they can be mixed, what admiralty law is, how it plays in, what ecclesiastical probate jurisdiction, all that stuff. Before you need to know that stuff. And before you can have a conversation about how we ended up in this situation where we all directly go vote for the president, you need to learn how we originally were supposed to vote for the president. And I've explained this on my show. We don't. We had no direct involvement with the federal government because our country is our state. The word state, first of all, means state of being. And we were in a free state of being because the people were the sovereigns, right? And the state, in the sense of the government that borrowed a portion of our sovereignty, okay, were subject to us. So basically, we lent them a portion of our sovereignty to deal with facilitating trade within the state and dealing with other states and dealing with the federal government, right? When it came to being hurt by somebody, or if there was a crime, right, the state didn't press charges on you. That's not a fucking thing unless you're a 14th Amendment tax cattle, right? That's not a thing. one of the people had to go and swear an affidavit with a witness, okay, and then serve you with the writ, or have the sheriff or the justice of the peace serve him with the writ, and then take you to court. And this is for non-infamous crimes, right? And infamous crimes, okay, you had to have the same thing. You had to have a grand jury. It had to go before a grand jury before you could even be arrested for the alleged crime. And crimes were only harming other people. Your rights end where another person's begin. This is not theory. This is not, oh, he's one of them sovereign citizens. No, I prove this on my law all the time. I can prove it 7 ways from Sunday. And I prove it from the law, the congressional record. I prove it. My regular subscribers, they know this. So before you can challenge how I arrived at my conclusion to look at the positive side of what's going on and support the man who literally is saving us from communism right now, you have to understand how we got here in the first place. So I'll give you the answer. The way that you were supposed to vote for the president is you did not. You did not vote for the president because you had nothing to do with the federal government, because the federal government is not a country or anything. It is a trust, right? And the United States, as it exists today, is a corporation, and the District of Columbia is its own sovereign city-state. And there was no such thing as a federal citizen or any of that. So literally Congress had no jurisdiction over any of the people, and they still do not have jurisdiction over the people. They have jurisdiction over persons through the 14th Amendment. Okay, so the way you elected the president was you voted for a county elector, because the strongest, the most powerful person in the land vested with the most sovereignty from the people. So it's in government under the people. The most powerful person in the land was the sheriff. Okay, that's it. And he was subject to the people, and no government person could press charges against you unless they did so in a personal capacity under common law. So if you had a problem with somebody, you would take them to court, you would hold court. You know what I mean? You would essentially file a writ, serve them with a writ, and then an action at law, such as a declaration of trespass or something like that. And then you would literally hold court. It's your court. The justice of the peace would act as a referee and had no tribunal authority whatsoever. What that means is he had no judicial authority. He could only interpret facts of the case for the jury. And that's if the defendant even required a jury, right? Because he had to ask for a jury. If not, then you're just the sovereign of the court. And he would have to file his motions, and you could hear them or dismiss them, and you had to be fair. And that's what operating as a sovereign is. I have so many common books on actions at common law, right? Common law actions and defenses and all this stuff. And I read them, and I know how this stuff worked in our country. So you cannot challenge me on being grateful for being saved from that communist drunk lizard bitch. And more importantly, the people from behind her. And listen, Trump didn't save us. We saved us because we stood up in enough numbers to overcome a rigged fucking election, which was obviously rigged. Period. That's what happened. So, and you can still see how they're attacking him and trying to figure out how to, and this is what all these psychological operations, a huge part of these psychological operations revolve around trying to not let him be inaugurated. Okay, because as soon as he does, a lot of communists lose a lot of money, and we're going to get into that. All right, I want to play something real quick. Last thing I'll play. I want you guys to remember this. This guy stood up.
Has put Canada in the door.
We're done listening to YouTube, soy boys. Hold on. This guy stood up in front of the United Nations, right, or Davos, right, which is essentially the United Nations, all the wealthy oligarchs that are all invested in the United Nations, and essentially told them to fuck off. He's the only person in recent history I've ever seen, or political figure, and he's not a politician, he's just a businessman in the first place, not just a businessman, but a very skilled one, and stood up in front of these people, told them to fuck off. And I don't know how many of you actually realize this or even know this happened. So Let's check this out real quick, and then we're going to shut down and go over to Rumble exclusive.
When I spoke at this forum 2 years ago, I told you that we had launched the great American comeback. Today, I'm proud to declare that the United States is in the midst of an economic boom, the likes of which the world has never seen before. Today, I'm pleased to announce the United States will join 1 Trillion Trees initiative being launched here at the World Economic Forum. 1 trillion trees. And in doing so, we will continue to show strong leadership in restoring, growing, and better managing our trees and our forests. But to embrace the...
He says that's pretty much the limit that we're going to indulge this fucking climate hoax you're trying to use to use state of emergency powers to deprive us of our right to property and our resources, right? International or nationally as well. You know, they want to take our national sovereignty, our national rights to the resources, which we've already got to get those back from the federal government. So check this out.
Possibilities of tomorrow, we must reject the perennial prophets of doom and their predictions of the apocalypse. They are the heirs of yesterday's foolish fortune tellers, and I have them, and you have them, and we all have them. And they want to see us do badly, but we don't let that happen. They predicted an overpopulation crisis in the 1960s, mass starvation in the 70s, and an end of oil in the 1990s. These alarmists always demand the same thing: absolute power to dominate, transform, and control every aspect of our lives. We will never let radical socialists destroy our economy, wreck our country, or eradicate our liberty. America will always be the proud, strong, and unyielding bastion of freedom. In America, we understand what the pessimists refuse to see: that a growing and vibrant market economy focus.
So my point is this: he's the only, not just the only politician in the United States, but the only politician in any nation that would ever dare to do this. And what happened directly after this was that George Soros called an emergency meeting, and that's when they decided to steal the election in 2020, which led to the whole J6 fucking whatever you want to think of that. It was definitely set up, orchestrated, and designed to pass anti-terror bills regarding domestic people like us who watch shows like this, and you know, who do podcasts and try to tell people what's going on, where they want to make us domestic extremists and all that stuff. So, you know, this was a big problem for them because they've spent so many decades working towards this thing, and this might be get the channel or the show taken down also, because that's another one of their big things, or they'll just put a little banner under it, but whatever. Anyways, so like I said, anytime somebody wants to come up on a Friday or Saturday night, have a discussion with me about this or about law or how we ended up in this situation or how we get out. See, and a lot of people, unfortunately, in what I call I've started calling the red pill community, because truth community is just so wore out, and it just sounds lame, right? So yes, red pill, right? People who choose the red pill and want to investigate things. There's so many false rabbit holes and stuff, but a lot of people become very nihilistic, and I believe that is also a psychological operation. You get exposed to so much stimulating information that changes your worldview, that and you don't know, you know, before you have the foundation of the understanding of what they're after, which is essentially worldwide communism and absolute title over your body, your will, and anything you would ever work towards. Until you understand that, you can't really discard false information. They throw a lot of like alien, lizard, space, all this stuff at you. They throw, and it creates nihilistic people that really just want the world to burn. Okay, so I would ask anybody, I'd say, what I explained to you guys, if you guys are just joining, you'll go back a little bit, you know, about 10 minutes from now. And I was explaining how like our law used to work, which just briefly, and how we got from that to here. And it's us. It's people got lazy, stopped learning the law. You stop learning the law. You could go right back to where we were right now if you knew what I know. Well, I mean, not right now. You'd have to spend time and write up your paperwork. But once you get it on the record, it's over with. They can't administer your estate. That's how they pay for everything. That's how they pay for the military. That's how they pay for all their spending bills. It all comes out of your Social Security or other trust funds based on the underlying Social Security trust account, period. Okay, guys? So our original system of government, even in a free society, which we originally had, you still have laws because man did not create law, right? So all of this is a devolution of law we've ended up in today. And until we can get enough people to wake up and get out of it, we have to be grateful that Kamala Harris is not president, and the stuff this guy's going to do is going to fix the economy, man. So Pex Place says, I cannot talk on panels, cancer and voice mocks, but I understand that, Pegs. Okay, I thought you said something else at first, but yeah, that's awful. Actually, I'm sorry to hear that. I thought you said the panel was like a cancery voice box, and it can be. The internet is like a subway station, as my dad says. You never know who the hell is going to roll in when you open up the panel. But we are going to go Rumble exclusive now. So if you guys, I put a link in the description. We're going to get into the juicy stuff now. I'm not really going to get into politics or law or censorship. That's why we're going to Rumble. Now we're going to get into the psyops I wanted to discuss that are currently going on, other than the censorship one, which is the only one I can really talk about on Rumble too much, or on YouTube too much. We're going to discuss the BF, the COOF 2.0. Right, we're going to discuss some details we could not discuss on YouTube about the Cybertruck and all of that, and a couple of other things. I have them all lined up. So if you guys want to pop over to Rumble, give me a like and a follow over there. And we are going to shut YouTube down. I am sorry, Beyond Elemental. I will keep you in mind when I do these and make sure that I do not make too many Rumble exclusives, okay? So we're going to pop on over there. Anyone who does not head over there, I will see you Friday because I'm going to not stream tomorrow so that I can get a day ahead of this and kind of get maybe, some better production value, just give you guys a better show, you know what I mean? And get some more information on everything that we're going to be talking about. So thank you guys for joining me on Rumble. Hopefully you head over to YouTube, and if not, I will see you Friday. Now, as soon as I figure out how to stop streaming on YouTube, how the hell did I do that? Should be able to, yes. All right. First